All right, good evening. This is the Sunday night podcast, strategy podcast for Tortoise Capital. It is July 26, 2020. Thank you for your patience. So I mentioned earlier this week I'm participating in the University of Chicago Business School's multi-domain strategic thinking workshop, a international collection of thinkers and doers. And they're trying to figure out how to use process maps, mind maps in times of great VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Is there some way to use mind maps and design thinking to improve our performance as decision makers under periods of max VUCA? And they're specifically looking for the intersection between military and business mindsets. So one of my grad students, after leaving our college, went and got branch qualified as a senior major and is now taking another graduate degree at University of Chicago. And he and his professor wanted to put something together to see what they could see. And so I got invited to participate, and it seems to be going pretty well. So I am sharing with them this diagram that comes from our hybrid workshop, hybrid trading workshop. And I think it was probably back in March or April. Here's the flashcard. It's a little primitive, like everything I do, kind of caveman style. But I thought I would document the process there and then use this recording as a way to talk them through it. So I wanted to share it with you. So as I look at our process, I consider the most important part of that thing is D, point number 10, which is the where we make decisions, that lead to actions. That's the whole point of our process, because it's in the decision that we make that we have the opportunity to create value or not. So shrink that down a little more. It's still kind of a fat arrow. Yeah, it's better. So that decision that we make that leads to actions from 10 to 11, that's not the same thing. I mean, the act of making the decision drives actions, or actions are a consequence of the decision that we made, but they're not the same thing. That there's a whole transmission gearbox in this arrow that says, how do you go from a decision into action? And there's probably a whole dissertation in there. But that's the essential nature of those military decisions and the trading decisions that we make, is that when we decide to do something, that's going to lead to actions. And that entire sequence of decision making and action taking happens inside this E sub 0, an environmental frame, which contains all of this stuff that I'm about to go through, up until the point where we take action. It's that moment where we take an action that we're introducing our variable into that ecosystem, that we are doing something actively to change the environmental dynamic. And then that action from 11 is what then drives the creation of a new environmental frame, or environmental frame, E sub 1. Because those actions have consequences, and then those actions lead to results. And then the whole feedback process starts all over again. Now we're back into E0 with a new environmental frame has just been created as a result of the actions we took, and then the first, second, and third order effects, which we could say are the results of our actions. Well, how did we get to point number 10? To make a decision. Well, at point number 9, we used judgment, that we considered the choices that we had, that we were aware of. And then from that, we evaluated those choices, and in that act of judgment came to a decision. It's not the judgment is not, I would say judgment is the comparison and then the selection of the courses of action, from among the courses of action and what to do. And then there's a commitment that makes it a decision. There is a decision that it's time to act right now from among these choices. And then that decision leads to action. So there's a judgment about the choices. And where do those choices come from? They came from 8, some period of, some set of recommendations that came out of 7. So a period of reflection where we considered the best things, the least effective things, the best takeaways, the questions, the aha moments that we've had, where we have been reflecting on the entirety of our experience from all the way back, consulting our database, talking to our experts, and, thinking about thinking. There's a whole process of creative and critical and professional thinking that comes out of 7. It's not just an analytical process, although it could be. It doesn't have to be. It could be purely intuitive. It could be 0 time spent in there for reflective thinking. If there is a period of reflective thinking, it's because at 6, we were able to place a wedge, W, in between the impulse to act and the decision to act. So if we were unconscious, if we were just pure instinctive creatures, then the impulse to act would trigger the action. So this whole sequence of 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, where there is the possibility of putting a wedge in between the impulse to act and the action, that wedge creates the time and space in which we might engage in some kind of critical, creative, professional, visionary design thinking that produces a range of recommendations that we can judge which one to select. And then if we decide that it's time to act, we can then decide to act on that judgment, which then leads to actions and results. So we can talk about where that wedge comes from. It could be habits, could be luck, could be an intention, could be a conditioned response, it could be a deliberate choice, a learned behavior. But it's in this from 5 to 6 where that prefrontal lobe gives us the opportunity to do something other than simply reacting to contact. So this impulse to act in a certain way is what we've inherited from our ancestors, that evolutionary process that came up with this amazing adaptive brain. Well, that impulse to act comes from some trigger, number 4. Something from the environment came in contact with our boundary, and that trigger was strong enough to breach that boundary to where we are aware of it. So you can think of your awareness as the inside edge of that boundary. So if that's just like a thick shell, there's a lot of potential triggers that come from the environment that just bounce off that shell that we're not even aware of. It was unable to penetrate that defensive barrier. So we could say that in some ways, our awareness might be the inside of that boundary, the inside bound of that boundary. If we had an awareness that pushed beyond that shell, then in fact, the shell is simply a layer in our ecosystem, and it's really the edge of our awareness is the boundary. So that may or may not be a physical shell. It may just be a field of awareness, and that's why I draw it awareness as the inside when it first comes to our attention, is the inside edge of that boundary. And then as we become a complex organism, we might have layers and layers of boundaries. But beyond this is things happening in the environment that we're not even aware of. And then when it penetrates our awareness, we can say that that's a trigger event. And then we're hardwired to feel an impulse, like this fight or flight syndrome that dominates our emergency response system. And then that impulse leads directly to an action, fight or flight, unless at 6 there is some kind of wedge, which creates time and space potentially to go through some kind of reflective, analytical, intuitive, creative, critical process. This is where magic occurs in our software. I've rated as just of one example among the trillions, the 5 questions plus, which you'll notice is really the same way that we collect feedback about the last event, the best thing, the worst thing, the best takeaway, the biggest unanswered question, the aha moment. This is that bubbling cauldron of thinking and cognition that's going on in our head all the time, more or less unconscious. And then out of that fog of our thinking comes that set of recommendations, and then we make a judgment about which one what's the best thing we could do if we took action. That leads to a decision on what to do with the result of our cognition, which then can trigger an action, which might be to do nothing. And then that decision cycle, we might think of that as 12 as some cycle time. How long does it take us to go from the impulse to act to the action? So there's some kind of cycle time in here. And then how we manage this entire process, there is a function of management of what to do with those information flows, the data, the products of our thinking, the artifacts we generate, the discussions we have, or do we just throw it away? There's some function of management in there, which gives us the possibility of using this case as simply one more case in our database of learning to try to get better on the next cycle, assuming that we're going to survive contact. That if we survive, then perhaps we can thrive. And that to me is sort of a function of management. You can think about this as a manageable activity. You can be efficient and effective at some cost and over some period of time. And the way that you manage that entire process can lead to improved performance or underperformance in a competitive environment. So this is the mental model that I see in my own trading behavior. And so I'm trying to get that documented and to show this as a process so that I can examine different elements of this individually and then see how they fit together, and then I can consider the supporting processes that are going on inside each one of those. So we're going to see an example here in a second from Catherine, who's given us the results of her first 7 weeks trading with our techniques. And she's gone through a terrific learning reflection period with her accountability partner. And I'm really impressed with the work she did. So I wanted to share that with you here in a minute. So that's going to be my next contribution to the University of Chicago process, a way to use a model as a means of establishing communication framework. We can, well, hey, my model is different, or I would do this, or what do you mean by that? The act of externalizing the model into a process now makes it an object of study, and it becomes an artifact that can support communication and becomes shorthand for future discussions, and it allows us to externalize all of that stuff that's spinning around, inside our head. It's a simplification, of course, and it's built on beliefs and assumptions and perspectives, but it becomes something that we can consider in our communication. So I wanted to say that. Before we get to Catherine's stuff, I want to go through, I think it was Robert posted, we got one symbol to review tonight. So we're going to take a look at Robert's. I'm going to respect his work and take a look at his symbol of interest, BOIL. Ready? All right, so this is a daily frame on Bloomberg's ultra natural gas, and we're looking at daily charts here. And there's some interesting things in this. Let me see if I can. That's going to make me save it. Just hang on a second. Let me get this up. Thought it would let me paste it in. It won't. Wish I could work as fast as I think. But not faster. Okay, there we go. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so let's start seeing what we can see. The first thing that I'm noticing that I already like is that we have a higher low in the penetration of the the RL10, and that this 2350 feels like a strong support level. That feels pretty good. Next thing I'm noticing is a lower highs, so then higher lows. So we get some kind of wedge being formed like this. So is it going to go up or is it going to go down? Which means that we're coming towards a critical state, and we might look at the this distance in here. This blue box as the the distance between the two converging PSARs. I might look at this second dot, let's call it 31, as that PSAR, -2, I suppose. So if this price were to continue to go up, the PSAR flip will occur when the RL10 gets through that PSAR dot. At the current rate, it's probably 1, 2, maybe 3 days away from that occurring. So in 3 days, how far could this thing go? Well, in the last 3 days, it's gone from 24.50 to 30.50. So it's made $6 on 24 in 3 days. That's a 25% gain already. So now we're worried, oh man, is that too late? Well, by the same token, we notice over here, it made this move from 26.50 to 35. So that was $9 on 27. So that's 33%. So there's still maybe another 8% available. And that would be about $2.50. So 33, just on the basis of symmetry, 33 is available. And that's not unreasonable, because that's also like the Z2, the peak of the RL10. So there's at least this much gain in there. So if it's $2.50 on the next surge, and if I broke that into 4, I could give it 1 unit of risk, say 3 units of gain, and if each one, so that would mean if I had about a 60-cent stop, then I could get 1, 2, 3 units of gain just up to the Z2. Can I manage? So if we just round that off to 50 cents, so this would be the size maybe of that risk box. So let's suppose that it broke through here at 30.50. I'd have to have my stop like right about here. That feels manageable intraday. So my note to myself is 50 cents MMRB on a hybrid frog. Now, if it can get through 33, then it can get to 35 pretty easily, which is another $2. So there's a target there now. and a target here. So that's, call that target 1 and target 2. That seems reasonable. And then we just notice back over here, this whole area was pretty tightly a support level, and then when it broke sharply. So it would have to, 35 would be the upper reasonable limit of that move. Because if you take a look at the maximum move we've just seen, 2350 to 35, that's really what we're playing for here. And the advantage is that this is a higher low than this one, and so we're thinking, hey, that may mean that more buying pressure came in here. It waited this long to get down to this level before that buying pressure came in here. This time, that buying pressure came in around here and took it higher. So that suggests that, yeah, it could get through this with some possibilities. Why would we think that? Well, see, the difference between this low and this low is about $2. So if there's the same amount of power, then you think, yeah, this could get $2. So yeah, that makes 35 the maximum reasonable tactical trade here. So we might think of this as, we think of this as point 1, this is point number 2, call this point number 3. What we have here is really a 1, 2, 3. And then if it can get through 2, it can get up to 4 in that second lap. And that's all kind of triggered by the fact that we got this higher low. And then we're betting that this could go symmetrically higher. But again, there's that strong resistance level over here at 4, and that's what we'll call that step 0, if you will. And then that's the one that corresponds to this. So we're having a lazy W. And this higher low is the implied improvement, the increase in buying pressure by a factor of about $2. So that one looks reasonable to me. And so if we started this off as a hybrid frog, we would wait for the opening, see where that open is, and then with a 50-cent box, really, as soon as it gets above 30.50, we're long. Above 30.50, be long with the 50-cent box. And then how fast can we get that to no lose plus dinner for 2? Intraday. And then then it's a science project to see how far does it get towards Z2, and at what point would I want to hold it. Okay? And so all of this is kind of geared on the idea that, not later than 31, that's that Z, that PSAR minus 2, because it's going to take probably 3 days for that PSAR dot to flip, because it's a function of the RL10 getting up there, not the price. By that same token, if we look back over here, this was that Z minus 2. It flipped here, and so you could get this entry either right here or right in here. It wasn't until this bar that the PSAR actually flipped when that bar closed, which means that you're not even entering it until this bar. So when you have this horrible selling and then a sharp recovery, a lot of times that PSAR dot, because we're using the RL10, that PSAR dot is just taking too long to flip because the RL10 has such a long distance to go. And when that you get those first 2 or 3 moves out of there, you might have been able to trigger here instead of waiting for the PSAR flip to trigger way over there. So that's the main logic behind this. So on a daily frame, that feels supportable. So now what I want to do is go back and look in and do a second round to look at this thing maybe more systematically. So I'm going to use that multi-time frame, multi-lens analysis. So I'm going to start with the monthly. And what I'm noticing is, a tale of two symbols. At some point you have this kind of action. That was a month when it went from 300 to 700 on that log, because we're using a log scale on this one. So that at 2.5 times, that would be the equivalent now of that thing going from 25 to 70. And then within that same month, giving it back and then coming back even worse. And then from there on, it's been nothing but, the end of natural gas as we know it. And on that log scale, it's gone from essentially 300 to 30. So it's minus 90% of its value. There's our log scale. Ouch. On the monthly, we are in, pull this up a little further. Still winter. The only thing that this even has going for it on the monthly is the fact that it's got a little bit of a slight uptick in here. Almost all of these other things on the way down, each month closed lower than it opened. There were just a couple notable exceptions, and there was no follow through in them. Here's a month. Here was a month where it tried. So this is like the third time that it's going to try to make that move higher. And it's hard to be more unloved than this. And let me finish up by saying, yeah. So just to get, so fair value on this thing is at 30. The top of the dragon is at 70. And the Z1 to get it back in the river is at 60. So there's, on the day chart, we're looking at a 50-cent manageable box. So what's going to be interesting on this one on the weekly is going to be if we have a better frame on, and if we're thinking about a swing, that actually feels pretty good. If we take a look at this just from a support level down here, these were those monthlies where we saw an uptick. This is what feels like the sideways move here. I like the RL10 has bottomed out at 23, call it 24, and is tilting up. It's got her crossing the baby dragon there. It had a strong week last week. Z1 is within range. And as a measure of immediate interest, 34.5, call it 35 is a target. Each of these would be tripwires. I'm going to call the spine of the dragon and the high of the week as an opportunity. If you can get through like let's call that 31. Yeah, that's worth a shot. Because we could call this move here this low. On a swing trade, you could either pick 23. Yeah, I think you would. I think you'd say 23. $23 because that gives us about a $7 stop to the low of the week last week. Or if you said the belly of the RL10, yeah, that's like buying an option on heating oil. So I think that's supportable on the fact that who else is out there to hate this any further? There's almost not enough room in there for it to go to zero. I mean, how much more can you squeeze out of that stone? And the fact that it's successfully endured a double bottom, and now when was the last time that the baby dragon was crossed? And it moved from 40 to 60 in that period. So that's a 50% move. So this thing could go to 40. Sure. Yeah. Certainly reasonable. So yeah, Robert, I like it both on a intraday and then on the daily. I think, or on the weekly, I think there's a potential for that to grow into a swing. You just give it at about a $7 stop. That's certainly within reason. So nice work on that. Okay, I want to cover Catherine's work. So now I just want to tell you a story about my the soccer team, and their homework last week was to do two things, and it was related to. Let me find that if I can. Yeah, the flashcards. I'm actually using the soccer team and you guys as part of that other workshop. So this is from the master flashcard deck. Yeah. So I talked a little bit about that this week, the coach and player dynamic. And so the homework that I gave the kids was I asked them, who do you want to be coached by? What kind of person do you want to have to be your coach? What are the qualities that you're looking for? And let me know what those are so I can see if I can be that kind of coach. And if a coach is willing to listen to a player and give them feedback about that and receive that as feedback about their own performance, then it's possible for that player to help co-create this coach-player dynamic. And then I asked them, if you were a coach, what kind of a player would you want to have playing for you? who do you want to coach? Because I said, I need you guys to think about that, because many of you are going to be coaches for my U10 team, and I'm going to use you as part of a community service project to help you build your leadership and your coaching experiences and help you understand the game, but also to get you some community service and some leadership and teaching experience. So not only did I want them to think about what they wanted from a coach, I asked them to now think about this through the eyes of a coach, and what kind of a player do you want to have playing for you? And then I said, now once you've done that, do a self-assessment to see if you think you are the kind of player that you would want to have if you were a coach. And if so, that's good. And if not, what can you do about that? So what I'm helping them do is learning how to see through the eyes of a coach. And this coach and player relationship in soccer is built on the art and science of the game, some measurables and skills, and then we can communicate about those things with our common language. So being a coach and teaching them how to see is only part of it. It's also teaching them how to say what they mean about these different skills. So they got to become aware of the skills and the measurables and the art and science and why we do certain things, so that they know how to see it and then how to talk about it. And then we can connect all of that towards the goals that they set for themselves and that they commit to. And then we can together develop the path on which they can develop. So this coach and player dynamic is pretty powerful. It works between soccer players and coaches, between a trading coach and traders, between a business coach and clients, between you and yourself, or inside family dynamics. There's really no stop to that. The student-teacher relationship is in there too, and that's the kind of environment that I'm trying to help create at our military college as well. So I'll talk about this diagram as part of that University of Chicago project as well. Well, that leads me to the kind of feedback that I gave Catherine, because if you were in the chat room this week, you saw that she said, hey, I had this tough week, and then I rattled her cage a little bit and said, hey, that's just feelings. Do some work on that. And I talked about that, I think, Friday night. And I asked her to do a learning reflection and share it with her accountability partner, to think twice and say once. And what a beautiful piece of work that she's done here. And this is sort of the answer to the question of what kind of a person do you want to coach? And then I hope that I can live up to her her intention for what kind of a coach she wants to be coached by. But what a marvelous piece of work she's done here. She says, I realized I didn't have the data required to provide head-based conclusions. So her response was heart-based and not necessarily on the data or adherence to the rule set. When consulting the evidence, she decided that the PSAR rule as an exit feels the most reasonable to her, and that the system works, but her rules need to be refined, and then adherence levels measured to the degree to which she is following her own rules, evaluating her own kata. Simple works, keeping the greed in check, and work out what hesitation looks like or reversing. So she's going to have to refine what those things specifically mean, and then being mindful of the fact that she's only in the second month of trading this system, and that she's not doing self-assessment. So be careful about changing too many things just as the system is coming into control. So the conclusions that she made from all that was that she's surviving and that thriving will come, and that her rules are fluctuating more from emotions than from this kind of structured approach that she now knows that she can do. And the next time it'll be even easier because she's done it. So her commitments then to what she will keep doing. And so this is now the basis for her to give to her accountability partner to make sure that she's doing those things. Listen to each podcast, study and review, do the daily markups and recording the data. She's writing her trading book. Keep on keeping on. Marching, learning lessons, locking it in, daily record of self-work. Sharing that with her accountability partner and then the broader Euro team, who's been very helpful. And, to be fair to other team members, if you want team members to give you assistance, it's really not fair or even possible for them to work with emotions, because your emotions are exactly what they are, and that's not something you can fix. The only things you can fix are the things that you've made deliberate decisions on. And so when sharing information, she's going to be looking at things that are evidence-based so they can act on it. Otherwise, they can only refer to her emotional interpretations of that data. So I just thought that was a really nice piece of work. And then this was the one that I thought was just so amazing. So she itemized what she has: good rule, standard work, good system, time available. Her ability is improving. She has money to work with, willpower and discipline, support and opportunity. There are things that she can control. And then I thought this was really excellent. What she thought she needed to develop when she was operating from the emotional domain, she thought that she needed to work on trusting herself and believing herself. Nope. That wasn't the shortfall. It was actually persistence and trusting in the system and learning patience. If the system works, then learn to suffer, to just put up with the times when, as she has noted, the reality that there are going to be losing trades in there. And that's just the part of the equation. You can't hide from that without changing all the other rules. The other rules evolved as a response to being able to accept that heat or accept that pain. So she then came to this conclusion about what she thought she needed to develop and then what she actually needed. What she needed really was a good, stable data set from a stable set of rules in order to make some analysis of a large enough data set in order to be able to use analysis. Just a simple piece of hardware, another screen, to reduce the frustration of not being able to monitor more than one market. Luke is finding out that that's the case with his giant monitor that he just added. That will just absolutely make a difference. Talking earlier and more often and in a relaxed way with the accountability partner. And that's why they're there, is to help as that pressure relief valve, that radiator, so the heat that comes from the engine can be effectively dissipated into the atmosphere without keeping all that heat in the engine. That's what the radiator is supposed to do. And then a little bit of patience. Learning a new skill takes time and repetition. So what she will keep doing are those things: locking it in, developing the craftsmanship, the persistence that helps you endure. So as your skin gets thicker, you don't even feel that pain as much because your body is adapting to it. Your body just says, oh, we've sent you these pain signals, but you keep doing the same things. So rather than feeling that pain, we're just going to build up calluses and a thick skin until we can do other things that'll make you change your behavior. But if you're not going to change your behavior, then the body and mind and spirit are just going to adapt and learn to suffer. So when you learn to suffer, it doesn't even hurt as much anymore, because it's just like, oh, that's just how it feels when we're doing things like this. I thought this was a pretty nice chart too. Now this is, I don't know these guys, but edge work, discover your edge, and I guess they must be in the professional trading, coaching, and education business, I suppose. I really like the dichotomy, the results versus the process, and that's kind of what I've been saying, in the same way that whether this is poker, if I played the hand correctly and I win, that's good. If I played the hand poorly but I won, that's actually really bad, because it reinforces bad habits. So I thought this was a pretty nice graphic. And there's a nice walking man who is running into that brick wall. Okay, brick walls don't go on forever. Over, under, through, around, or leverage it. I really like it. That's a nice clean vision. So the specifics on our data. I look at the rolling R average for all trades is still right around 2. That's pretty good for trading a brand new system while you're learning the system. I think that's pretty good. The cumulative R, you can live with that. Now, the average rolling R is going down, but that's just a reflection, I think, of the nature of the market shifting to being a little more granular and less follow through. It's been more sideways and choppy, so you're not going to get as big unless you can start finding those movers, which is why she needs that extra screen. And then just notice I'm noticing the 30 trade rolling average, still positive expectancy, and there are periods of time when we get stability. So this is those areas this is where I might go back and now take a look at, what was there a change in market conditions or in your behavior? Did you try to do it harder, and then were you adapting against the rule set without evidence, which caused this, or was it really just the nature of the system? So those would be those. So when those support levels break, was there a change in your behavior in here that may have contributed to this? Or was this simply a consistent picture of the performance of the system? So I like the fact that even when at its most negative, it's still positive expectancy, so you're getting paid to learn. You can learn to live and thrive on that. Well, I had let me see if I can find this. Let me finish up on this one more time. So all that to me looks very positive. And I would say now we have a data set we can actually learn from. I actually don't care what happened last week. I care more about the entire package of the data. 143 trades, so that's 20 a week over 7 weeks. Worst loss -1, so that's good discipline. Best 4.3, so we're open to the right-hand side. It's about a coin flip, 71 to 68, and it's paying 3 to 2, better than 3 to 2. So even if nothing changed forever and ever going forward, how many times a day do you want to play a system that it's a flipping an honest coin, and if you win 3, and if you lose 2? How many times a day do you want to play that system without changing the rules? I want to play that forever. I want to play that as much as I can. So when you take a look at that performance through good times and bad, we have an SQN and an NSQN that shows this is not random noise. And so there are some things that we can do. Consistency, good. 50-50 win-loss rate, but make them win. If you could go to a billion-dollar hedge fund and give them that system, you think they'd buy it? You're damn right they would, in a heartbeat. Hey, you're getting 5 trades a day in all kinds of weather, and you're generating that after only 7 weeks of performance. Yeah, that's not the time to change the rules. That's time to refine the rules. So if we go back and look at what she concluded, yeah, what she's going to keep doing. Stay at work. Manage your trades. No big deal. This is just what it feels like when you're trading like this. That's all. Nothing else. Let me see if I can find that bamboo thing. I took some notes. I was listening to a kid. He's an artist. And I really enjoyed his little presentation. He was talking. The title of his recital was "The Best Advice He'd Ever Gotten That Changed His Life." And so I'll listen to that about art and stuff. Sure. And it. Oh, doggone it! Don't tell me it didn't save. I'll really be upset if that's the case. Well, that's strange. I recorded, I sketched one out. Maybe it didn't save. Doggone it! I'm gonna have to redo that. Well, um, I'm gonna save that one for tomorrow night. But it was a kid talking about. Uh, he was dithering. He was trying to make one brick for 10 different houses instead of making 10 bricks for the one house he really wanted to do. And he talked to his artist mentor who said, "Hey, draw the same thing every day for a year." So he's from Australia, so he chose the ibis. And so every day he just committed to drawing an ibis, and then pretty soon he started thinking about ways in which the ibis could be drawn, and it started to unfold and flower for him. But it took away all of the angst and energy and cognitive effort of choosing what to draw so he could just concentrate on drawing. That when he had drawn enough ibises, then the quantity started turning into quality. And this is the same lesson that we get from Alex McKinnon and Kim Anderson, that trading is craft knowledge, and that they both discovered that it took about 600 case studies to really just get into that unconscious competence zone where she could apply ruthless risk management and just keep going. So Catherine's a quarter of the way there. She's got 140. So all she's got to do is another 500 or so. And then I expect that that's going to just become second nature, and she's going to be fine. But imagine that at the 25% mark, she's already positive expectancy and has a system quality number greater than 2, has a fair coin flip, that pays 3 to 2 with 3 or 4 things already she knows to do. That's, I think, going to have positive effects on that. So that's a pretty good position to be in after only 7 weeks. Now, for those of you that have ever gone to other trainings or workshops or whatever in search of a magic bullet, where were you 7 weeks after that workshop? Were you doing any of those things, or were you dabbling? Or are you committed to doing that one thing and getting it done? So that's very strongly connected to the idea of the kata. All I'm doing that with the kata is asking you to do the same thing for a week, not a year. But many of you are finding that difficult to do. I find it difficult to do. But that's why it's important to do that. Where do you think the thick skin comes from? There's a freedom that comes from the thick skin. That you do that kata enough, you learn to realize, oh yeah, that's right. The system is actually pretty good and nothing to worry about here. And then you can relax. That's when you learn to suffer through that, then that pain sort of goes away. It just becomes part of the feeling of life. And you incorporate it into your nature, and that means you've adapted to it, and you're just going to get better. Because then that frees you. Instead of thinking about the pain or worrying about the pain, you just endure it. And then you look at the next thing to improve. So that's everything I wanted to cover for tonight. I'll get this published and posted. And again, guys, I will go through as many charts as you guys post on the weekend on these Sunday preps. If you want to take advantage of that, then you got to post your trade frames. But I'm not going to do your work for you on that, because that would be cheating you. Okay. So we'll be interested to see how Boyle works tomorrow and then through the week. I think that's going to be interesting. That's not that much different than the USO trade that we looked at 6 or 7 weeks ago, when it was that showed up on the RLFF screen at something like 20 ATR away from the long-term fair value. So that's kind of where Boyle is right now. I don't remember explicitly looking at that, but let me see where that rascal is on the daily. No, it's actually, it looks like a, how about that? The RL270 is actually below. How interesting is that? That in this rectangle, we had something like a super pinch probably, where the RL270 and the RL10, the 30 and the 90 were all tightly collected. And now it's moved sideways in this period, while the RL270 has continued on its way down. So this is actually the sign of a very slow turning movement. And you're going to see that RL90 is the next thing to turn. And that's going to start turning up here pretty soon. The 30 is already turned up. 10 is turned up. The 90 is flat. And the 270 is slowing down. So yeah, this one will be interesting over the next days, weeks, and a month. Robert, we'll keep that one on the radar. So that's everything I got, guys. Take good care. We'll see you tomorrow.